conversation got started for you? Let's start from the beginning. Like, how did we end up here together?
So first, our mom saw your video and thought it was awesome.
Everybody makes a difference in everybody else's life. I think it's really important that we know that, because each one of you matters, and you make my day special when I feel like I can help you, or I need your help.
Love me. There's nothing like a feeling when someone you don't know, you've never met, tells you that you matter and that you are loved. I wish our teachers would treat us as geniuses and not as numbers. We love you, you love us. Love me.
Know their significance. You have an opportunity to do that today. When you find their lunch table, your lunch table today, look someone in the eye. We're going to practice, because that's what I do. I'll model it with you. Let's try this together. You ready? Say it with me. You matter. You can do better than that. Say it with me. Are you ready? You matter. Hear those words. Feel those words. Change a heart. Change a mind. Change a mood today. This is your assignment. You do that, I'm going to give you all an A. This is what it will take to keep the A.
Well, we wanted to welcome you to our panel today. My name is Todd Nesloni. I am a principal at Navasota Intermediate in Navasota, Texas. I am going to be your moderator today and participating in this panel with these amazing individuals up here. We are hoping to inspire you with some of our stories and ideas, and then just have some great conversation up here as well. I'm going to let each one of the panelists introduce themselves before we jump right into the conversation. And so we'll start over at the left with Steve and end with Angela.
So I get to sit by myself over here so I can have more water. All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Steve Messler. I'm the co-founder, president, and CEO of an organization called Classroom Champions. Todd Nesloni actually participated this past year when he was still a teacher. He's now leaving our ranks and moving into principal, but we're excited to get some of his teachers involved at his new school. In my former life, in my past life, I used to run for 5 seconds and sit for a minute, and I was the best in the world at it. So I was an Olympic gold medal bobsledder and world champion and 3-time Olympian for the U.S.
I'm Drew Minnock. I am a former 3rd and 4th grade teacher in Bluefield Hills, Michigan. And I am one of the co-founders or creators of Two Guys and Some iPads blog and the Two Guys show. And this year used the You Matter message to really capture our students in some awesome activities, so I'm excited to share those.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am Brad Wade. I am the other one of the Two Guys and Some iPads and the Two Guys show. Thank you. Been working with the You Matter moment with students. I've been teaching 3rd grade, 3rd and 5th grade for the last 14 years, and realized the value of seeing the importance and the value in every individual. And I know you've seen it too, and you're going to hear stories about how we've changed the lives of kids, and that's why you're here today, is to do the same thing, because your heart's in the right place. So we really appreciate you being here today.
I'm Angela Myers, founder of Choose to Matter, educator always, and I'm here to remind you how much you matter.
Well, great. Thank y'all. I guess this is on. Okay, here we go. So we also want to encourage you, as you were hearing things from us today. I know I'm really short. This podium's getting on my nerves. Sorry. But if we're going to use a hashtag to back channel as well. Just the You Matter, our You Matter panel will be our hashtag to back channel this, along with the ISTE 2014 hashtag. And then one of our friends, Daisy, is Ustreaming this event as well, so that we can have a recording of the conversation also. So thank you, Daisy, for doing that for us. But I guess the best place to start is I'm just going to ask questions to the panel, and we'll have them jump in. So y'all guys can jump in however you feel so led. But so much of today's focus in education tends to be the importance of teaching the curriculum. And that's where we tend to focus it with our kids in school. And I think all of us on the panel would disagree to some extent, though, in saying that there's something just as important to focus on, and that would be empowering a child and giving them a voice. And so I guess, how would you speak to that, about the importance of that to you, and why you think that's just as important as the curriculum?
Well, it's important to realize the value in the kid, and we all have curriculum we have to teach. We have state guidelines, we have national guidelines, Common Core, and everything, and that's not going to change. The content that we have to deliver is going to always be there, but the children in our classroom, the children we can impact, is always going to change, and we have them for just a short window of time, and we have to make sure that we find the value in them and give them a voice and let them be heard, because kids don't go home and say, wow, that was a great math lesson today. Kids don't tell their own children when they're reliving their childhood and say, do you remember that math lesson we did, in third grade? No, they remember stories. They remember how you impacted them. They remember that they had a voice. They had a say in their own education, in their own genius, and their own value. So the curriculum will always be here. And it's very important. We have to know it. We have to teach it. But we really have to pay attention to the student and their value and what they bring, and make sure that they know that they matter, they're important, and they do have a voice in their own learning and education.
To piggyback off of that, we get a question a lot of times too. It's like, what do you think of Common Core? And what do you think of this? And it's just, it all starts the relationship that you guys create with your students in your classroom. And if they value the experience and they come to school every day and they're excited to learn and they know that their voice matters and what's going to happen throughout the day, the curriculum and the rest of that stuff, it just takes care of itself, because they're excited to be part of it. They're excited to come to school and learn, and they know that their voice and their thoughts and everything like that, they matter in what's going to happen in their learning.
I think the interesting thing is, from my perspective, as Classroom Champions operates in the U.S., and we operate in Canada, we operate in Costa Rica, and this is definitely right now more of an American, and being an American myself, this is definitely more of an American problem, we want to call it that, than anything else. As we look at it at Classroom Champions, we look at what success means to a child. If you would say that, one of your students, if you would say, what would success be at the end of the day for them? It probably would be going to college or university. That would, maybe that would be our successful child that would go to university, maybe. So if we use that, how do you go to university? You get good grades. How do you get good grades? You get good test scores. And then we kind of stopped the conversation there. We've kind of stopped at test scores. We've only gone 2 levels deep into what causes success. And I think I would argue that we just especially in the States, we've stopped digging deeper past what gets good test scores. And I think if we can go in to get good test scores, kids need to come to school. So we need to create an environment that is happy and that is dynamic and that is fun for them to be at. They need to create good habits. So when they come to school, they can do those good things so they can get those good test scores and get good grades and then go to university. And then, before that, they have to be inspired to do it. And I think that's the one place that, when I look at the work that everybody up on stage here does, it's about inspiring the child. And it starts with trying to dig down layer by layer about where success comes from. So, I think as I look at what one of the, if you want to call it the problem right now, or the issue is, it's definitely American things. As I go to Canada, I don't see it. As I go to Costa Rica, we don't see that. And as I was overseas, I don't see it as much. So, but I think they've dug deeper than just the test scores.
I'm going to take a much more direct approach in the urgency of this message. And one of the things that's misunderstood most about these 2 words, although they are inspirational, these are not words of inspiration. If I give a child a bottle of water, if I give an athlete, anyone, food, they are understood as essential elements for basic survival. Mattering is not a nicety. It is a necessity. It is as significant to our learning, to our living, and to our survival as food, water, and air. Human beings don't want to matter. They need to matter. And the key word there is human beings. This is not a child thing. We work with human beings, we work within a human organization, and we are there to show human beings who they can be because we love them. There isn't a separate agenda. You either love them or you help them learn. The bottom line is, and this is biology, this is not ideology, if you do not secure their hearts, you don't have a shot at their brains or their business. Your gateway to the learning that we demand in the standards is through love and through emotion. And if a child doesn't feel, a human being doesn't feel noticed, valued, and essential, then you don't have a shot at what you really can get out of them.
And I love, Angela, that you said, it's the human being, it's not just the child aspect. Because I think there's some of us in this room, myself included, who we've worked in environments where we didn't feel like we mattered, and we didn't feel valued in the environment that we were working in, and that inhibits us as a teacher, and makes us less impactful for our kids when we're coming to a place that we are not happy to be in sometimes. And so I think that's an important point that Angela makes, that this is not just a student conversation. This is a person conversation, and finding ways to identify and value everybody that you come in contact with, because they're going to leave your presence and impact somebody else. And if we leave that negative activity with them, then they're going to go and potentially hurt someone else emotionally because of what we started. And so I think that's why it's powerful to think of it like that way, instead of just focusing on our students, is to focus on everybody we come in contact with, and trying to leave them and have them leave our presence knowing that they were valued in that moment that they spent with you. The next thing I really want to hear about is, I know Steve co-founded Classroom Champions, which you've heard us mention, but some of you may not know about it. And I know Angela is behind the Choose to Matter movement. So, Steve and Angela, I'd love to hear from you about your organizations that you've created and kind of what they exist to do for education or for kids.
1, 2, 3, go. So, Classroom Champions is, at the end of the day, our goal is to increase students' goal-setting ability and perseverance skills, increase interpersonal skills, increase digital literacy. Those are the things that we want to get to. At the end of the, to boil it down, we want to help kids get better at getting better. And we do it, as Angela mentioned, we do it through relationship. I'll take you back. The best way to explain what Classroom Champions is sometimes is also to explain what Classroom Champions isn't. How many of you have had somebody come to your school, whether they be an athlete or a prominent person that was a role model in the community that came in and gave a talk? Okay, so almost everybody. If you haven't been at a school, you went through it when you were a kid. As a 3-time Olympian and as an Olympic gold medalist, I did that. And it'll sound really bad, but I got tired of it. Because you go in, you give a talk, you spend 30 minutes with kids. Unless you're LeBron James or Derek Jeter, they don't really know who you are, especially if you're a bobsledder. That's not funny.
Bobsledders matter.
And
Hashtag bobsledders matter.
I will start that. And as we go into these schools, we give these talks and we leave. And we never see these kids again. We have no idea if anything we said actually made a difference. We only said it once, and how many of you can tell your kids something once and they learned it? How many of you can tell an adult something once and they learned it? Let's not put everybody in the same box, or let's put everybody in the same box, I should say. So, and at the same time, I would leave, and I have no idea if anything I said actually made a difference. So we decided, and I say we, my sister and I. My sister has she taught in Brooklyn for 3 years. We're the children's teachers. She's got her PhD in education and social policy from Northwestern. Lee Parisi is her name. And Lee and I decided that we could do better than that. So what we created was what turned into Classroom Champions. It was my last year. We created it my last year of my Olympic career. And now we have athletes like Meryl Davis and Charlie White and Haley Wickenheiser, for those of you from Canada, and people like that. And then we also have people like Alana Myers and other people who you may or may not have heard of. And instead of going in and giving a talk and spending a couple hours doing that, every single month they spend 5 minutes and send a video lesson from wherever they are around the world. And they establish relationships with kids with classrooms that we adopt for them. So every single classroom that's part of Classroom Champions, Todd's classroom was adopted by Joshua Sweeney, who's a Paralympic gold medalist. and a former Marine who lost his life in Afghanistan. Who here would like their kids to learn from somebody, learn how to set goals, persevere, play fair, invest in your community? What are the steps to success? And then the kids actually get to send stuff back. So from my perspective, the athlete's perspective, we get to actually see what happens. They send videos. Todd's classroom did an amazing job. Robin's in the audience here from Surrey outside of Vancouver. Their kids did a great job. And we form a relationship. We want to bring the athletes from up here, like this. We want to bring the athletes right here. So the first thing the athletes do is send an introductory lesson. So they teach kids, here's what my favorite food was when I was a kid. Here's who my friends are. Here's one of my favorite colors. We want to show kids that excellence isn't genetic. It isn't something that only a few chosen people can do. It is something that every single person has the ability to do, and there's characteristics that you simply have to follow to get there, and that's what we do, and we partner with teachers that do it. We do not dictate to them how to teach these things. We just start the conversation, and we step back, and we try to do it in the best way we can, and support teachers the best way we can. So at the end of the day, we're a teacher support network. We're not really a student support network. So that's what Classroom Champions is about in a very long elevator run.
And speaking from as a teacher who did Classroom Champions this last year, like Steve said, we had Josh Sweeney, who, like he said, was a former U.S. Marine who lost both of his legs in Afghanistan and came back and joined the U.S. men's sled hockey team and ended up actually being the player who scored the winning goal in Sochi to have USA win the gold medal. And so to have him be a part of our class, it's funny, like Steve said, I gotta stand up because I can't see everybody.
I know.
But like Steve said, when I told my class we were doing this, I'm like, who's our athlete? And you say Josh Sweeney, all of them say, who is that? And so at first they're like, well, he's not somebody that we know very widely. But from the first introduction and the first lesson we did, the first video, the kids were just in awe that somebody who had this professional background was speaking to them. But even more impactful is somebody who had come from a very challenging past, who had to deal with a lot of blows personally to their life. And I've taught in the school districts that are very low socioeconomic status. And those kids who many times feel like they'll never get out of their community because of the environments they rise in. And I will forever remember one of our monthly lessons was perseverance. And when you have an Olympic athlete who has been through something where he has lost his legs and he has come back from it, and he is talking to you about perseverance, there was not one word the entire time. And to have somebody like Josh stand up there and say something like, the kids got to ask questions, and kids, they sometimes don't have a filter with what they're going to ask. So the kids get up there and they ask things like, were you really angry when you lost your legs? And to have him look at them and say, you know what? No. He said, it happened. What was I going to do? Except take it and move forward. That's the life I have. That's what I'm going to do. And you know what? Because the next kid said, well, would you go back and change it? He said, nope. I love the way my life is right now. And so for kids to hear that, it was so powerful. And that's those kind of things that this is why we have these, because that's empowering kids. And you know what? This Classroom Champions that I was part of, it was easy. It wasn't a lot of work on my end. It wasn't a lot of work on the athletes' end. It was something that wasn't complicated to bring into my kids, but had such a powerful impact on them that those are things that they'll remember much more than the math lesson I taught them that next day at school. And those are the kind of things that are going to impact those kids and make them love coming to that environment where they are much more open to the learning that takes place.
And that being said, when you said the math lesson the next day, all of our teachers share lesson plans. We have an internal network. I can show you a Friendship Month lesson that involved math from a teacher outside of New York City, or inside New York City, actually. I can show you a goal-setting lesson that involves science. The athletes' lessons aren't sport-specific. We ask them not to, at the end of the day, their challenges to the kids aren't sport-specific. We want kids to say, my goal is to be a clarinet player. My goal is to be an architect. We use demonstrable excellence to teach kids the process of excellence. And that's what we really enjoy doing. That's what sport is, and that's why sport is a good place to start, because kids can see it. Classroom Champions, we'll move into the arts, we'll move into other areas, we'll move into music and other things, and people that are excellent at those things, because if kids can see excellence happening, then they can, if it's role modeled, and sport is such an easy place to role model things. How do you have a conversation with kids about fair play?
Right. You
do it because it's something that happens on the sports field, but I'm I've been a fan of Angela's for quite a long time, and we've gotten to chat back and forth a little bit here and there, so I'm really excited for her to tell her story about You Matter as well. So.
Well, this just builds on exactly what you said and what Todd said. So I want to add a dimension of, in your lead, what mattering is not. Mattering is not a strategy. It is not an event. It is an absolute choice. And it is a choice that you make minute by minute, breath by breath, instant by instant. It is not a choice you can demand, or you can legislate, or you can just poof, magically say, we're going to put somebody famous and exciting up here, and they're going to sing and dance for you, and boom, you're going to feel like you matter. Because it is not a statement of inspiration. It is a call to action to remind you that you have a fundamental human responsibility, not only to our classroom, but to humanity, that you have something that someone else in the world needs. I can guarantee you that. I don't know the moment that you will meet, but you must be ready for that moment. Sharing what it is that will define your success can be a model for what defines success for other people. So we build on exactly what that's doing, and to really help kids differentiate. And by the way, kids have no trouble differentiating that mattering is not an inspirational movement. Adults have been the ones that have had grappled to get around with this. Oh, this is just warm, fuzzy. This is so cute to tell people they matter, and boom, everything changes. No. Show them that you believe they matter by asking them to do things that matter. And that's when you say, I believe in you, I honor you, I value your contribution, and the most important words in whatever language you say is when someone says to you, I needed you. I could not imagine doing blank if you weren't here. Thank you for showing up. You're exactly what we needed. That taps into a DNA level motivation that unbridles creativity, unbridles bravery, unbridles innovation at a level I've never seen human beings do. It is almost like superpower Olympian. You feel like you can conquer the world because you are needed. You are being called upon. And that's what Choose to Matter is. Choose to Matter is a community of change makers that work together globally to solve the world's most complex problems using every single genius and contribution. We don't care if it's from a 5-year-old or from a 15-year-old, but there is an entry fee into that. You must sign a manifesto. We wrote the manifesto after the talk, and I just wrote what were the tenets of mattering to differentiate what it is not. And it starts out with, I am enough. I have something of value that the world needs, and I commit to working on it and delivering it without expectation of reciprocity. And we just sent it out to the network trying to see how many kids really would commit to mattering publicly. And 877,000 children in 6 continents signed the manifesto. And those are the ones we know are involved. And Choose to Matter provides the opportunity and access to individuals like Steve and partners, like we have a partnership with a group of general leaders, 1 through 5-star generals, active and non-active, the entire community of Medal of Honor recipients, the most influential business leaders in every industry, from the innovation department at Mayo Clinic to the top entrepreneurs and innovators, from the CEO of Zappos to the CEO of eBay. And they are not underestimating our children's contributions. So they're not simply there, I don't mean simply to be a role model, they're there to work beside children and say, you see the world differently than I do. You have a genius that we can't see. We have the experience, we have the resources, we have the ability for your ideas to scale, but we do not have your view of the world, and we need your contribution. We had a room of 6,200 kindergarten through 12th grade students in a single room, and all they were asked to do is commit to mattering, be brave, and do something with anyone in the world that they think they need on their dream team. And in 48 hours, 100 social enterprises were launched. One of the best pictures of the event, of one of the Choose to Matter live events, was 786 kindergarten through 12th grade students, and part of it is sharing your story, sharing your genius. What is it that someone else can count on? And we told the kids you could divide up because there's no way you would listen to 786 people, and they refused. They said, we cannot miss one genius. And for a solid 2 hours, they lined up in a circle around the gym. So every single student, kindergartner or 12th grader, got up to the mic and said, this is my genius. This is what you can count on. And here, world, take whatever you need, and I am there in service of you. That is mattering. That is not inspiration. That's not activation. That is a view of humanity that everyone needs to be a part of.
Well, you know, and as classroom teachers, Brad, Drew, and I mean, I know you two guys have done things in the classroom like I have that really work to inspire kids or to also have that kind of message. Can one of you speak, or both of you, about something that you've done with kids to do that?
Yeah, you know, just I guess most of us are in this world of education because you're here for the kids and you want to make a difference, and that's part of your genius. That's what you want to do. You believe your role is there to help these young individuals become better and learners and world learners and global thinkers and learn how to collaborate. I have a story that if you've been to some of my sessions somewhere, I have a story about a young man that, and I won't have the luxury of sharing the entire story, but the message, I'll share it a little bit with you, but the message I want to give you is you never know what it might be that may make a difference in a child's life. I do a lot with emerging technology and iPads and augmented reality and game-changing apps and things. We did a rollout program with some technology in my classroom, and I had a child who had been a selected mute all his life. He'd spoke to his parents and his one best friend. I was teaching 3rd grade at the time. You have to think he was 8 years old. He had been in public schools for 4 years, and he had reading recovery teachers because he doesn't read, at least nothing out loud. So you have to think about his entire life. He's lived inside his head, and so he had some challenges with social skills. We were not very sure what his abilities were because he struggled to communicate. So he was in my class because I had his older sister many, many years ago. And so I knew who he was, and I had a little bit of a relationship just because I remember when he was born. So he was in my class, and, you know, beginning of the year, I mean, he's just not going to talk to me, and it's okay. But I made one decision. I said, I am not going to rescue him. I will treat him like every other student in my class, and he will have to learn how to cope with whatever it is. So, like, one of the things is every day we do lunch count. You know, in my class, it's like, okay, kids, today's choices are, you know, pizza, salad, whatever. And I would call every kid's name, and they would say, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. Well, when his time came up, this was first full day of school, he'd come up and he'd point to it, and that was fine. But over time, what happened is he started using the iPad, and we did a rollout with some applications, and one of them he was really, really good at. It was Cargobot, a coding application. I had nothing to do with it except for it was something that he really got engaged in. Well, I knew a critical juncture was coming up because it was time for students to present on their apps that they were a part of. And over this time, Justin had become very good with this game. I'd seen him play. I talked to him just like any other student, and you know, he was receptive, I assume. He nodded and seemed to take what I was saying to him. So all of a sudden, it's time, this is October maybe, and it's time for everybody to present, and they're in small groups. So I simply said, all right guys, we've gone through the whole rollout, everybody has had a chance to work on every application. I said, you need to get with your groups, and I said, I would like to hear from everybody. See, I phrased that because that would be my desire to hear from everybody. I have a selected mute in my class. So I simply phrased it like, I'd like to hear from everybody. So here's what happens. Justin walks up to me, and he tags on my shirt, and he goes, can my group go first? This is the first time Justin had ever spoke in a public situation or a school. So inside, I am jumping up and down and screaming. But on the outside, I'm like, all right, yeah, you can go first. And I'm like, I go to the back of the room just amazed. So I'm like, all right, so I give him the microphone. We have a microphone in the classroom. And Justin comes up, and his group is getting ready to do Cargo Bot. He steps up to the mic and goes, my app is Cargo Bot. I want to show. And the class just was amazed, and they were just celebrating this. And so what happened is, you have to think about it. He was liberated. He was in Drew's class last year. He was in Drew's class this year. He was in my class last year. So he was liberated and starting to speak. Now, think about a quandary I was in. Well, I want to go call his parents. Okay? But I was really nervous, so I had to think about this. I knew I had parent-teacher conferences coming up in 2 weeks. So I made a decision. I waited. Because I did not want this to happen. I didn't want to go to the phone and say, guess what? Justin talked in class. And they go, Justin, I can't believe it. Next thing you know, I don't have his trust. And he clams up on me. And next thing you know, a 9th grade teacher has this problem still. So I waited. And so I had parent-teacher conferences. And it was a Tuesday night. And I was meeting with his parents. And I was going over the very little information I had from him. And I was going over things. And I said, I want to show you something. That day, I gave Justin a microphone, and I gave him an iPad. I said, hey, Justin, I said, I'm going to be meeting with your parents tonight. Why don't we do a little video? You can show them Cargo Bot. And he said, all right. I still have the video to this day. So in my classroom, I did it with noise in the background and kids, because I had found out from the parents earlier in the year. I said, what would be your big goal for the year? They said if he just said something across the room in front of his peers, we would be amazed. So now here you have to think about that guy. He's talking in his class. He's liberated, and he's starting to share information. So I'm sitting down with parents. The conference is about over. And I say, you know what? I want to show you something we're doing in the class. Here's an app that I want to show you. And I had Cargo Bot up. And I said, I want you to see something. And the mom presses play. And there's a video of Justin. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I know you're with Mr. Wade. I look over, and of course, Mom's just crying. She's just in tears. And Dad's just in disbelief. And so I looked to her, and I looked to both the parents, and I said, what now? And Mom looks at me and goes, I guess we talk academics. For the first time ever in 4 years, they were talking about how to educate my child. She said he's just been liberated. She came in the end of the year, and he's a whole different child now. His brain has been reactivated. He has believed in himself. And see, the reason I bring this up is you never know the impact you are going to make or something that you are doing. He found something that he believed in and that he mattered at. He was very good at coding and working on this program. And he internalized it and wanted to share. He found his genius and made that part of who he is. 2 years later now, he's a great kid. He's confident. He speaks. He's presented in class. I know both Drew and I have had to tell him to be quiet. And the first time I did that, I was very nervous. So,
I just want to say one thing about your genius, because this is important. Teachers don't realize the power they have. Whether you know it or not, the message you said was, I'm not going to treat him any different. And no one is going to grow in empowerment if you look at them as needy. No human being wants to be known as needy. You gave him the position to be needed. Why don't you share with the class what you know about this app? We ignite empowerment when we show other people that their contribution is needed. So whether you know it or not, you were the genius. You just gave him a step.
And I know, Drew, you and I both did a You Matter Day. So, I mean, I'd love to hear from your perspective about that.
Yeah, I had saw one of Todd's posts on how he had done a You Matter Day with his students, and he had each one of them sharing, kind of how somebody else in the classroom matters and things like that. And I was just like, what a great idea to kind of spread that message. And so we started off by watching Angela's TED Talk to just to kind of activate and get them familiar with the You Matter movement. And then we have a long billboard outside of our classroom. And I put a big piece of paper up and just, 2 words that can change the world. "You matter" in the middle of it. And we opened it up to our students, as long as every other adult in our building or anyone that came into our building, other students and things like that, to write on there to anybody. And it doesn't need to be another student. It could be your uncle that lives somewhere else. But just to write to them and tell them, "You matter" and why. And it was unbelievable, the kind of response that the students came up with to make sure that every student in our classroom was included on that wall so that no one felt left out and everyone thought that they mattered. And they had parents walking by writing during an activity that our school does at the end of the year. And they were stopping by as they were walking from class to class. They were stopping by and writing on it because we left a bunch of markers out there. And it was unbelievable, some of the messages that were left on that wall to kids that don't always, they don't always get those words of encouragement, or they're not always told that they matter. And to have their peers and other ones recognize them for some of the things that, it's not that you're awesome at math. There weren't many things like that on the wall, but "You're such a kind person," or "Thank you for being my friend," just things like that. "I remember when you did this." And those are a lot of things. And to get that from 8, 9, 10-year-old kids is really powerful when they're able to grasp that. And I had a special, that is such a small moment, and the kids I don't think they really realized the impact that had on that child, but you should have seen that child light up when he came back to our classroom and wanted to tell me that he was the one that captured the flag. And it's just, they did that all on their own. They didn't need any prompting from a gym teacher, a parapro, myself, anybody. But the fact that a group of 9-year-olds did that all on their own after we did this message, it just kind of shows that they're getting it, right? They know that sharing "You matter" to their classmates and to their peers and how powerful that really can be. And it was something to see. It really was an exciting experience. And so I took Angela's "You Matter" manifesto and I printed it out and laminated it for every one of my kids, and then wrote a message to them and why they matter to me, and put it in their report card envelope. So that's was my treat to them at the end of the year. And it's cool because I've gotten like 3 or 4 emails this week from students just kind of saying thank you for that. And it's just a small thing. It takes just a moment, but you don't realize the impact that it's going to have on them later in life.
And speaking to that, when we did You Matter Day, the kids in my class had to write 3 letters. 2 to people on campus, whether that was a peer or a professional on campus, and then 1 to somebody in their personal life. And it was so interesting to me, the change in attitude that day from the entire school as kids went to deliver their letters to teachers that had impacted them. Because as teachers, sometimes we don't see the impact we leave, or we forget very easily for some reason. And when you get that 1 letter that says, "You're the reason I passed this grade," or "You made me feel special this day, thank you," was very impactful. But we had a student this year with cerebral palsy, and he had trouble walking and running and things like that. And he wrote his letter to a girl in another class that said, "I remember falling down at recess, and you walked up to me, and you helped me get up. And that's why you matter to me." And she took that letter home and left it in her backpack, and Mom found the letter, and she just called me crying. She was like, "Oh my gosh, you have no idea how much this means to me to see that my daughter impacted somebody else." But I'll forever remember that Angela shared a blog post by Erin Kress at the beginning of the year. And Erin had written this letter to all of her students. And so I took Erin's letter and modified it for me, but it was a letter that went out before any kid got there, and I sent it to every one of my 75 students. And I said, "I have not met you yet, but you mean the world to me, and we're going to get through this year together, and I don't care what's happened in years past, but when you come into my class, you are special, you mean something, and we are going to work together to make you a success this year, no matter what has happened to you." And I had parents that came up and said that was great to get that letter, whatever, but I never saw an impact on students. So I'll try to get through this story without getting emotional. But at the end of the year, I had a special education student in my class this year. He has never passed a standardized exam, never felt success. And after school got out, we were cleaning the classrooms, and his mom came to the school, and she was just crying and crying and crying. And I said, what's wrong? What's going on? And she said, oh, I got to talk to you. She said, I want you to know. Remember those You Matter letters that you did at the beginning of the year? I said, yeah. She said, remember those how you had kids write them at the end of the year? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, my son came home and he wanted to write 3 more. And she said, he wanted to write a letter to you, but he wanted me to read it to you. And when she came up and she read it to me, it said, I never had anybody that believed in me before they met me. And I came into your class knowing that I could be somebody because you told me that before you even knew who I was. And he passed all of his exams this year. And I know that there, like, testing is only a piece, whatever, but that is where he felt like I did it. And this is what he wrote. He said, I did it because I felt like I could for the first time. Because you made me believe that I was capable of anything. And that was when I thought, God, I don't care if I did anything else this year, right? I did one thing, and that child who had never felt success before, just because of a letter that went home before school even started, almost a year later, had felt the impact. And I think through all of us and what we share, it's the crazy little things that make those impacts. That was all, but I was going to say, we'd love to take questions.
Can I share one thing, Todd? Just one quick thing?
Yeah.
So, since the talk started, we've had it shared over 2.5 million times, the message, and been able to track the hashtag with stories like that. So, just imagine what my life is like. I'm crying all the time. All the time. So, what I've been trying to do, and it's not great before this, and I'm trying really hard, is to take examples, because they're little teeny things, so little that they're easy to be overlooked, and put them together. A kit's not the right word, but to put them together in a kit. Even the tangibles, like some schools did this thing called mattergrams. And everything that you've heard up here with kids, I'm saying we must do that with teachers. Leaders must do that. You cannot lead on empty. So this is what the staff room looks like. This is what the principal does before the teachers come in. And it trickles down. So we tried to get all of those, reproducible sounds really bad, but like little mattergrams and activities and highlight stories, like what did Todd's school do? What did Daisy's school do? What did Robin's school do? And just put it together, and little clips of pictures, and like when you see the You Matter wall, you're like, I could do that. I've got picture paper at my school. Not a single one of these takes more than an inch of effort, but it's not in a place where you can be like, oh, I could do that today. So I will try to get, I don't know what condition it's in. It's not going to look pretty. It's probably a Google Doc. So I will send a link through there using ISTE and the You Matter panel tag. And what I want to do is an open Google Doc. And I want you to be able to showcase what it is you do for each other. Even if it's outside of school, this is a human being's issue. And we can just remind each other, almost just a massive global collection. We've got businesses doing it, we've got organizations doing it, and it's the smallest little thing. And so we want to help you do what you absolutely are capable of doing. So I just wanted to say that.
The thing that always interests me when I go to education conferences and talk to teachers and hear stories from teachers and hear stories about students, and Angela and Brad had talked about earlier a little bit about not being sure if their message was getting through, or it's always really nice to hear Todd's stories again about making sure, just every now and then it's really nice to just be reaffirmed that your message is getting through. And the kids especially as well, that people believe in what they're doing is making a difference. The number one challenge that we have when we talk to athletes, Olympians and Paralympians, people who have been to the mountaintop and back, what the number one challenge in getting them involved in Classroom Champions is? Teaching them that what they have to say can make a difference. So you think that as teachers you're not sure, or as others. Because think about it, as an athlete, you've gone into school, and you've done it dozens or hundreds of times, and you've left, and you're not sure if you've ever made a difference. And eventually, if you're not sure you've ever not done something, you're going to start to believe it. And that's the number one hurdle. I have to show them metrics. I have to show them the things that we can actually demonstratively prove to them. Here is the bar, here is the difference, here is the compared groups, here are the control groups. So it's not just educators, it's not just students, it is everybody else out there in the world. They just need to be shown that they can make a difference because they want to get involved in your classrooms. They want to. They want to find a way to help you have better relationships with your students. They want to, and not only from a sports side of things, but from everybody else, military, everybody else who's out there. They want to be involved. They want to just figure out ways that they can do it without just coming to your school, giving a talk, and leaving and never seeing your kids again. So, I mean, I definitely encourage you to ask the people in your communities to get involved and find ways for them to be involved in small little ways, because they also feel like they don't know if their message actually gets through and makes a difference.
And they want to matter. We've had every industry, every business come, and they are getting more out of this than the kids, because that's what it means to live. There's a difference between success and significance. People in the world, there is a shift. We have achieved success, but people are looking for significance, and you cannot find it without service to others. So the world is willing. The world is accepting. We've just got to get our community to not underestimate. And some metrics for you. We did a study with 500,000 children for South by Southwest 2 years ago. 500,000 K through 12 kids, not a small sample size, asking them basically, what would make you run to school? And so the sign that you saw in the video, believe me, trust in me, honor me, say my name, look at me, number one answer, I just want to matter. So if we need metrics, that this is not a warm, fuzzy little, rah-rah at the beginning of the year, I can't think of more confounding, profound metrics than that. And you guys matter, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, so we're going to open up for the next 10 minutes for you guys to ask questions of anybody on the panel or the panel in general. It's a large room, so just speak in your teacher voice whenever you have a question. So, Angela's going to run the field to you. So, it's impressive. So, yes, Angela, we have a question right there. We got to get the mic on first. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
That's a question that I have, because working with a lot of districts, I see a lot of great things happening with them. Okay. Here's a question that I have, because I work with a lot of school districts, and we see moments of these greatness, and we celebrate them. A concern that I had, and this happened this last year, the school where my kids go had a situation. It was their Rocket football team. Some of you might have seen it on CBS, where they had a child with autism. What concerned us as parents afterward, it was made into such a big deal that it morphed for those kids from doing what felt right and good to doing something that got me something. How do we prevent that as we start this movement in our districts?
And just to speak to the panel, try to keep your answers under 30 seconds so we can get to all the questions. But Angela, do you want to speak to that?
It's a part of the culture. It can't be an event. It can't be a strategy. It can't be an activity. And when it becomes your number one mission, it is what our jobs are. We are there every day to change lives and change the world, and we do that one moment at a time.
And I think from my perspective as an administrator, that's going to be something we do as the entire school year. It's not a one-day event, because then when it becomes that event, then you just only view it as an event.
I'm proud of our administrators' program. Capturing students' hearts.
Okay.
They decided to embrace that as their administrators. It came out well, but it created a odd feeling for a lot of people, because it kind of forced.
That makes a lot of sense. It was part of that problem, actually.
Thank you. Does somebody else have a question? Wow, we're going to teachers with that question.
Oh, seriously, you're not going to hide your
Okay.
There we go.
We got a couple. We got over here in the orange.
Okay.
I appreciate you saying what you're not, because I think I was an adult that inspired. I get inspired really easy. I'm a pretty passionate person. But I know, I think I kind of tag along with her, but I think it's our culture in general that it was a big deal that those kids did that. You know what I'm saying? So my question is, how, if I take this back to my school, they're going to see this as a warm fuzzy. So how can I think, like you said, you start with the leaders. I'm not a leader. I'm one of the teachers. How do I make sure it doesn't stay a warm fuzzy?
So I did an entire piece on the neuroscience and science of matter. So my background is neuroscience, There is unequivocally science around, and you can read in any business book and anywhere, the happiness advantage, the whatever. There's about 1 million books out right now, John Medina's Brain Rules. So there's no deeper science than neuroscience. There's new neuroscience out of Stanford about discovery of a passion gene, Dr. James Doty. We've been working with the head of that research center at Stanford. So in the kid, bad word, in the kid, the first thing I put in there is the science behind mattering. Then the second thing I put in there is the economics of mattering. Because the amount of money we're spending in employee disengagement, in employee retraining, the Gallup poll came out, the morale in education has never been lower in teachers. Don't tell me that mattering doesn't affect performance, doesn't affect sick days. It ranges everything from apathy to suicide. This is pandemic, and it hits every area. We don't have a bullying problem. We don't. We have a mattering problem.
And in my former life was in between Bobsled and Class of Champions was also a lot of corporate consulting work. And corporate consulting work around leadership development. How do you convince $1 billion plus company that spending a whole lot of money on soft skills for their employees, how does that affect their bottom line? And I can tell you that one of the Canadian studies that we looked at because I was living in Calgary, corporate culture, fluffy word in the corporate world. Well, if you look at the TSX, which is like the Canadian Stock Exchange, which is the Canadian Stock Exchange, not like it is exactly the Canadian Stock Exchange. If you look at the growth of companies between, I think the numbers, I'm going to mess up the dates, but I want to say 2006 to 2008, or 2005, 2008, right before the recession that messed everything up. But when you look at the top 10 company cultures, you look at a 300% increase over the TSX average. So when you pull that kind of thing, so if you can find, just like Angela said, I'm a huge believer in metrics. I'm an athlete that had their sport measured to the 100th of a second. Show me things that will make time difference. In bobsled, we used to call it finding hundreds. Show me where the hundreds are, and I'll show you the path to making things happen.
We'll show you Xamarin, and we'll show you Google, and we'll show you i3n, and we'll show you even Lines.com. Companies that are massively growing. Culture is everything. In fact, at Zappos, if you can't make another person in an industry feel like it matters, you get 6 weeks of training, and if you cannot do it, and the other person walks away feeling like they don't matter, you're not fired, Tony takes you to quit. That's how fierce and vigilant the millisecond that mattering is targeted and researched in every industry except education and culture.
I would say, I just want to use the word, I would say consistency. Consistency keeps it from being a fluffy one-time event. It's not about the PR you might get from it, it's from the daily conversations and relationships you create with your kids. So consistency over time will win that battle.
We have a question here, a genius who likes to talk.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. I am a tech instructor for my district, and my daughter is a teacher and is really into this kind of stuff. And so I'm looking at it as how I can make my teachers that I teach feel this way and how I can pass this on to my daughter. So this is my question. I love all of this, but is there somewhere I can go, a website or an email address or something that will get me started, that will get me started? Because I can be very creative if I have to. And I've been doing this for 26 years, and so, and my daughter has only been doing it for 4 years, so she's extremely creative. And I think she would just eat this alive. And so I want to be able to bring this back to her, but she's going to look at me and look at my few notes and go, okay. So is there somewhere I can start and get some ideas and how I can get information on your Classroom Champions? And
we do have a website.
Okay, super, thank you.
And I'll send the link.
Yes, and for Classroom Champions, you can go to classroomchampions.org. Classroom Champions, all one word, .org. And on there, so we work with, in the U.S., we work with 50% or more free reduced price lunch student populations. So those are the populations that we're looking to impact. In Canada, where we work with low socioeconomic urban as well as rural and Aboriginal populations. But all of our athlete videos are online. So as a teacher, I would say hop on there, go to lessons, choose an athlete, and you can start from the beginning, and you can go through from the introduction all the way through, and all the video lessons are up there, and you can create that relationship in your classrooms, whether you're part of the program or not. You can follow those athletes on Twitter, and they're all really good people.
And we've got one final question, and then we'll close this up.
Yeah, no pressure. So I hear this is fabulous, and I think that I've been around a lot of great educators who are philosophically aligned with treating kids this way and having great relationships, because that's at the center of everything we do. But you hear people say warm and fuzzy, and there's almost a negative connotation to it. And I want to know, when did that happen, that warm and fuzzy is a bad thing? Right. And why do we need to think about ways to combat that attitude? I mean, I'm a little confused. For me, warm fuzzy is great.
Well, I mean, I've never had anybody complain about anything I've done in my class, because I use it as this is necessary for me to find success. And if you want my kids to be successful in my class, then these are things that I'm going to have to do. And the fact that there is still that success that comes at the end, and nobody questions what gets me there along the way. And then I have the proof that, look, building those relationships, that's what's got me here. Not because I'm an excellent teacher of math, or I can teach strategies really well, or teach how to take a test, whatever. It's because I've built those relationships at first, and I share those strategies and say, that's why I'm successful. And then I say, let my kids tell you. Because they can hear it from me all they want, but when they hear it from a kid, it's a totally different perspective. Do you want to share real quick?
Yeah, I agree. And going back to the previous question of how do I get started and things like that. And this is a book that I got ranched into shopping with my girlfriend, and she took me into this little shop where I was like, wanted to pull my hair out, right? So then I just happened to see that there was a stand that says Live Inspired, and it's called The One Book. How many people does it take to make a difference? One. And this book is so powerful, and it goes through, and it's like, it goes right with the You Matter movement. It's like, when are we going to ask students what they are? A marvel. You know, you are a marvel. There's nobody in the world that is like you. And there's just several examples throughout this entire book. And when you open the front cover, it says, the purpose of life is to discover your gift. The meaning of life is to give your gift away. And that's so powerful, is to give that gift, because that is so true, is that is the meaning of life. The feeling that you get when you see something happen in your classroom where it's like, wow, they get it, you know that they matter, and they know that they matter, and they share that, and they contribute their genius.
And you matter.
Powerful.
And we mean that absolutely. So your challenge today is to find 5 people. It doesn't even have to be someone at your table, something you notice about them, something that you recognize, something that someone shared. Walk up to them and say, I'm really glad that you asked that question. I just want you to know how much it matters and how much you matter. And walk away. Be ready that they'll think you're crazy. Be ready that they'll be like, what is your game? What do you want from me? You want nothing. It's like smiling at people, and they're like, I'm smiling at you. So it's okay. And that's how we grow. And you think you'll change those 5 people's lives, but you won't. You will walk home, you will sleep tonight, and you will feel completely different. So this is great about kids, but you matter.
And one of my favorite quotes, and this is what I kind of want to leave you on, is first of all, I want to thank these people for being up here to share their my favorite quote, and this is a woman who's inspired me for years, Angela Mayu. Her quote, they won't remember what you say, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And so that's the quote that I think that we could all live by. So thank you for being here and joining with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.